Hello and welcome to the WPAOG podcast. This episode features an interview with retired Colonel Mark Bieger, West Point class of 1991, and the new president and CEO of the West Point Association of Graduates. Mark graduated from the United States Military Academy with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering and commissioned as an infantry officer. For more than 28 years in the U.S. Army, he held leadership positions at the platoon, company, battalion, and brigade levels, deploying twice to Iraq and receiving the Silver Star for valorous actions. Mark's three sons also graduated from USMA, the most recent a 2023 grad. Mark also served in staff positions, including on the Army staff at the Pentagon, with the U.S. Central Command at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida, and with the U.S. Army's Pacific Command at Fort Shafter, Hawaii. Prior to his retirement from the Army in December 2019, he served as USMA Chief of Staff. In this episode, Mark talks about his West Point experience and the highlights of his Army career, his mission and goals for the West Point Association of Graduates, Margin of Excellence programs, and recognizing the connectedness of the Long Gray Line. Please enjoy this interview between retired Colonel Mark Bieger, President and CEO of WPAOG, and retired Lieutenant Colonel David Seary, Director of the Center for Oral History at West Point.
Good afternoon. Today is the 11th of September, 2023, and I'd like to start by saying welcome home to Mark and Amy Bieger. Mark, class of 91, and you were here previously, but we'll get into that in a second. But I want to say welcome home to you, and it's so nice to have you back at the Military Academy.
Well, thanks, Dave. It's great to be here with you, but it's great to be back at West Point.
If we could, please, let's delve a little bit into your past. Tell me a little bit about your background, your childhood, and how you got interested in attending the Military Academy in the first place.
I was the son of a non-commissioned officer, so Army brat, all over the country. When my dad retired, we settled in Phoenix, Arizona. That's where I went to high school. My uncle was also a non-commissioned officer for a career in the field artillery, and he was teaching in the Department of Military Instruction at the time, DMI here at West Point. And he was also heavily involved with the football and the basketball team. And he would send back articles and clippings and flyers periodically, back my direction. And one day in particular, he sent back this really neat practice basketball jersey. It was black on one side, gold on the other. And I thought that this was the most amazing gift. And I was a basketball player back in high school anyhow. So really exciting. His encouragement, my dad's example, motivated me to apply. And I was lucky enough to get accepted and join the Academy for Beast Barracks in 1987.
Now, growing up, do you remember any specific lessons your father or your uncle might have passed on to you about maybe the relationship between NCOs and officers, or what expectations might be of you when you became a leader?
Well, it's a great question. I think the example that they set was one of service to the nation, one that was committed to the defense of our nation, and a genuine love for our country. So that was a strong example shared throughout our entire family. My dad would always tell me, as I was a cadet or considering pursuing the Army as a career, not to get too big-headed, that the officer always needs the non-commissioned officer and officers and soldiers around him or her to be successful. So his was really a message of kind of humility, to make sure that, I understood that it was a privilege to be able to lead soldiers in any capacity. And that stuck with me, I think, for the rest of my life.
Tell me some of the formative moments you experienced while you were a cadet at the Military Academy.
As I go through the years, Beast Barracks, of course, was an amazing impact on my life and me as an individual. When I think back to Beast, the emotions and the images that come to my mind are really my squad mates, my platoon mates, my classmates. I entered a room there in Company A4 with a classmate named Mike O'Day from kind of a farm town in eastern Iowa, and Clint Brown, a swimmer, recruited swimmer from much closer. And the three of us, day by day, just made our way through that, very difficult summer. But we were surrounded by, back in our class, our platoon would stay together, through Beast, and then we'd transition to the same company once we reached the academic year. So we got very close. That plebe year, I know we all say this, but it was a tough one. Our upper class, they did not mess around. They had high expectations of us. They put a great deal of stress on us. It was all for our individual development, but for us to develop as a team, of course. So we got very close there as Apaches, focused on taking care of each other, making sure that everyone was successful. Those are some of the emotions or feelings that I remember vividly from that first year. For whatever reason, a couple things that stuck with me. Of course, boxing, no surprise. I think everybody shares that experience together, and I barely survived our fights there. Not too much blood on the floor, but that was an incredible experience. But also back to Beast, Schofield's definition of discipline still remains with me today. The words that are in that that classic saying are carved in my mind, and even in some of the more challenging, more difficult times in a career, I'd reflect back on those words and what they meant to me as a young cadet, and it would give me inspiration and motivation no matter what I was facing. Again, our class there in A4 were so tight, so supportive of each other. When I look back at old photos of us sitting there, either formally, in our class photos or just informally messing around, they were the reasons, honestly, that I made it through that first year. Again, it was very demanding, very high standards from our upper class, and it was our classmates were the reason that we succeeded together. The last thing that, and it of course starts plebe year, but it echoed through all 4 years, was a love of the alma mater, of that song and those words. So when you ask me what were the formative moments, it was committing things like Schofield's definition of discipline to memory, but also to practice, and sharing in those moments with my classmates. I'll never forget. As we proceeded through Buckner, through all the excitement of yearling and Cal years, the same thing rings true. Classes were great. I love the humanities, but I was better at science, and so I went civil engineering. But I loved the soc and the history and the psychology. Really every class that was offered. We'd mark our weeks by whatever intramural we were playing at that season, and the competitions within our regiment there were a lot of fun. I did play 1 year of JV basketball, I got to mention. So I had some great teammates there on that team our yearling year. I didn't play too much, but I got these really neat free shoes that I held on to. It was a great experience. It was a lot of fun.
That's wonderful. Now, when you graduated, you began a career as an infantry officer. What were some of the highlights of your time in service?
Well, I retired just about 28 and a half years, so just under 29 years. Variety of leadership positions, from platoon maybe to the Pentagon. Not that I led in the Pentagon, but I was supporting leaders in the Pentagon, and so many great places in between. The highlights were probably company command and battalion command for sure. I had the privilege of commanding Manchus out at Fort Lewis, Washington, with about a year of that command time in Iraq, just outside of Baghdad. Those deployments, like we all share, so many painful memories of sacrifice and heroism, really. I remember being surrounded by heroes of all ranks, coming from all over our nation, demonstrating some levels of courage that you only read about, you kind of only imagine inside of the movies. These men and women, are our nation's best, and the privilege to serve beside them in the defense of our nation, overseas, in combat, is something that I'll never forget. My last 10 years or so, I was lucky enough to serve at some of our largest commands in the Joint Force and the Army. I spent a few years at U.S. Central Command, and then 1 year at U.S. Army Pacific. So I got to be, again, surrounded by amazing peers and soldiers and civilians, but also some incredible examples and senior leaders. General Austin was in command there at CENTCOM for the majority of the time that I was there. So watching him and people like General Jim Mingus lead in some very complex time was incredible. And then in Hawaii, General Bob Brown was our commander, and the opportunity to learn from and watch them lead in some challenging environments was incredible. I'd say the things that I feel that I learned along the way was that although I was an infantry officer and I love the infantry, no question, I felt that every branch in our Army was special, unique, and important. And I can't tell you the number of times where you just name the branch, that individual, he or she, would step up in some of the most challenging situations and just blow everybody away. And if a cadet will listen to me, this old guy at this age, my advice to them as they get ready to really think about what branch they want to pursue is honestly, they can't go wrong. I know that doesn't sound like great advice, but whatever they decide, wherever they end up in terms of a branch, they're going to find challenge, they're going to find opportunity and reward in every single one of our branches. And just like every branch is incredible, I felt like in our career, my wife might disagree a couple of times, but every installation, every post was unbelievable. We went to a few of them kind of scratching our heads, not knowing what to expect. But again, we were blown away at the community, the opportunities, the unique nature of every. So it was all, just an amazing career. But the last thing I would say, Dave, and hopefully this doesn't sound too cliched, is that honestly, being in the military, being an officer, being in the infantry, for me personally, showed no greater purpose than to serve your nation and those that have sworn an oath to our Constitution. I've only been retired now 3.5 years or so, but I will never forget the time shared in the service of our country. And it's a privilege and honor that I'll take with me for the rest of my life.
Well, in addition to leading at all levels in the infantry, you're a graduate of the School of Advanced Military Studies, SAMS. How did that school help you in the military and in some of the jobs you've held since leaving the Army?
Well, great question. The School of Advanced Military Studies, honestly, I was kind of surprised I got in because the caliber of officers from all services that were competing, for just, I think there was only about 40 or so of us in that class. Was incredible. So the caliber of the individual getting into the course was, I thought, incredibly high. So once you get into the seminar, of course, you're reading more than you think you can read. You're taking, as many notes as you can possibly take and absorb. But I learned what I felt I learned most was from my classmates. And not only did I learn like particular pieces of history or strategy or doctrine, whatever we were talking about on a given day, I learned work ethic. I learned how to absorb greater levels of information. I think I learned how to communicate better, how to take the complex and make it simple. The lessons were, too many to list for this podcast. I just feel very lucky, for that opportunity. It was a gift that the Army gave us all, really the military gave us all, to spend that year in the study of our profession, surrounded by those great individuals. It was incredible. It also reminded me, I didn't need much reminding, but it taught me how much I didn't know about our history and about our doctrine. And hopefully it made me a better officer as I graduated.
Now, your final assignment in the Army was serving as Chief of Staff for the Superintendent under Lieutenant General retired Caslin from 2017 to 2019. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
My final assignment was here at West Point, but it was actually for General Caslin. I was his chief for about a year, 17 to 18. And then I had the privilege and honor of serving for General Williams as he came on as the next superintendent for about 18 months or so. First of all, it was amazing. I was incredibly honored just to come back here in that role for any superintendent, but to work for those two was, like getting a PhD in leadership. I was so appreciative of the opportunity to kind of come back home, what I considered where it started, to finish up the career. But what I was surprised by, and I told this to a bunch of people, I kind of assumed that West Point, you teach some cadets in the morning, you have a great lunch, somewhere, maybe you're doing some intramurals in the afternoon. I had no idea the pace and the level of effort that our faculty and our staff would give every single day, every single weekend to their cadets. It was incredible, the demands on our faculty and staff here. So that was a surprise to me. But I was very appreciative to serve the academy, to live in these beautiful and historic homes, and to do, my small part, I thought, to strengthen the long gray line. I had never served at West Point, of course, or in higher education. And like I said, I was blown away at the caliber of our faculty and staff. They just blew me away, not only in terms of the knowledge that they had in their heads, but the gift that they had to share that with cadets, to put it in a way, that challenged them individually and raise their, education was incredible. As you asked, watching General Caslen and General Williams lead, one thing I quickly sort of found is that I was always a few steps behind those two. I was always really trying to keep up with them because they were moving fast and pushing the academy hard. Luckily, our staff around us, the academy staff, was incredibly talented, also committed and passionate. And the entire West Point team is made up of what I consider some of the very best across the nation. So they didn't need a chief of staff really to show them the way or to, save the day. Really what they needed the chief of staff to do was to try to empower, to resource, and to put them in a place that they could achieve the greatest level of success, which I thought they did. The last thing I'd say, Dave, is having observed a few four-star generals prior to this assignment, those kind of level of commands, I was always struck by how much our superintendents, the scope of their responsibility and what they would have to kind of work through in a given day. They went from, as you well know, they went from, dealing with an individual cadet's situation, good or bad, all the way in the span of 90 minutes, shifting gears and thinking about the future of our institution and our academy, which had, second and third order effects on our Army. The scope of responsibility was incredible for a three-star general, I thought, and a very small staff to work with day in, day out. And General Caslen and General Williams, I thought, did it with the greatest level of professionalism, and were just, incredible bosses to work for.
Yes, sir. Now, after retiring from the Army in 2020, you served as Chief of Staff at the University of South Carolina from January 2020 until August 2021, followed by serving as the Vice President of Strategy at Louisiana State University from September 2021 until July 2023. Briefly, if you could, tell me about those experiences and some of the key lessons you learned in those roles.
Well, probably again, I underestimated moving on to University of South Carolina. I thought, at a university, there'd be nice, quiet days, lots of thinking, some reading, maybe some Frisbee football, whatever. But I was, again, blown away at the level of effort and activity inside of our institutions of higher education. I was lucky enough to be at, like you said, USC for about 2 years, and then LSU for another 2 years. The math's not perfect on that, but so I got to see two flagship institutions at work every day. Part of that was COVID, but I was blown away at what it takes to lead and to run a university, and the level of effort, the teamwork required to make that university successful. When you think about what the challenges that these institutions of higher education have to work through, it goes from politics, of course, budget and finance, dealing with the media, social media, marketing, and they still have the most important considerations, which is quality of education and standards inside of the classroom or in the research center or in the laboratory or on the athletic field. It's an incredible undertaking, and these flagship universities are working very, very hard to do right, for their students, which is the number one mission, but also to make sure that their state, feels very good about, what they're doing and what they're contributing. The people are incredible, and probably no surprise there. I thought everyone was committed, everyone was dedicated, passionate about what they were doing. And it's easy on any given day to kind of, get disappointed or slow down or, kind of get caught up in some of the negative, parts of any one of these jobs. But what I found at USC and LSU is that there's a genuine love and a passion for their students and their students' success. And there's a purpose there that's, it's really immeasurable. And I thought that those two institutions in particular did a great job at focusing on the students first and then working through to make them successful. The other piece I mentioned earlier was that I honestly didn't realize how important and integral these flagship universities are to their state. Of course, the state is, relies on the graduates that are generated. Of course, the states, rely on the research that's being developed, on any particular, discipline for the state. But they are vital pieces of a state's operations in terms of the economy, in terms of the way they're perceived, in terms of attracting talent in the shape of faculty and staff and students to the state. that was eye-opening for me as well. But I felt like there was same purpose, tons of energy and excitement, and they were great teams to be a part of.
Since August of 2023, you have served as the president and CEO of the West Point Association of Graduates. Your family has very close ties to the Academy. If you could please tell me a little bit about your family's relationship with West Point.
I've had this question a few times recently, and honestly, the best answer I can give is that West Point has had, of any single sort of institution or location, has had the greatest impact on me personally and my family of anything else. I was lucky enough to come here as a young cadet and make my way, through these 4 years with some incredible classmates. I was lucky enough to meet my future wife here, who was the class behind me here at West Point. Our 3 sons, we have 3 boys, they all decided to come to West Point as well and seek admission and commission as an officer. So we have a class of 16 grad, a class of 18 grad, and a class of 23 graduate, all out in the Army right now, all decided to go in the infantry branch, and all of them just, working hard to raise families and to do their best for their unit and for the Army. So it's about as close to home as we get. All of us, we're all moving around this great nation over 20 or 30 years, however long we decide to stay in. But so thankful and lucky that West Point has had, such a major, part of our life. I get beat up on by some of my bosses for the free education that we got with the 3 boys coming here. But my wife's quick to correct them that there's nothing free about West Point. They're serving our nation, and we're very proud.
Yes, sir. Why was taking the position at AOG appealing to you?
Well, we loved, like I was saying earlier, we loved our time in Baton Rouge with LSU. We loved our time previous to that in Columbia and University of South Carolina. Those institutions, the people, the locations, the warm weather, the SEC sports. All of it was incredible. Quality of life was off the charts. But honestly, nothing we've seen in our lifetime, and especially in these last 3.5 years, compares to West Point. There's a phrase we have here at the Association of Graduates that focuses our attention on what we call the moments that matter. And at West Point, these moments are literally occurring every single day. I've only been back here at West Point and with the Association of Graduates for a little over 40 or so days. And Dave, I can't tell you, it's almost too much to try to comprehend or to capture the moments that matter that are happening all around us. It's incredible. The first full week I was here, we started that week with a grad march back, where the class of 27 was making their way back to West Point to be, greeted by the upper class and welcomed into the Corps. They were joined by the class of 77, their 50-year affiliate, and about 250 or so other old grads, for 14 miles, making their way, 3 of those hours or so in complete dark, rain pouring down. You were on the march as well. It was amazing. But to see the interaction between our old graduates, the long gray line, and these young new cadets, soon to be cadets or 4th class, was powerful.
Yes, sir. With that, what are some of your goals for AOG?
Well, I have some personal thoughts, and I'm definitely in the learning mode here, just trying to soak up as much as I can. I was really surprised, and I would encourage all of our listeners in the long gray line, if you have a question, if you have a concern, if you have a recommendation, suggestion, any of that stuff, please send it our way, because we have an amazing team here. There's about 120 inside of the Association of Graduates of professionals, some of them graduates themselves, who are committed to this mission of serving West Point and the Long Gray Line. It's a great organization to be a part of. But not only that, just for me personally, I'm hoping that our alumni will see that as an opportunity to reach back and ask or talk or suggest. But to answer your question, the immediate goals I have for the AOG are about 4 or 5. I mentioned I want to learn from our team because we have a great one. I want to elevate our communications, both internally and externally. I want to strengthen our partnerships, and I want to challenge and empower our team to seek excellence always. And finally, I want to ruthlessly pursue our mission every single day.
And are there any key initiatives that you are interested in pursuing? Anything that are different than your goals?
I mean, I do have a few in mind. We're going to work through these here in the next few weeks as a team. Most of them are embedded and described in those goals, and just as you said. But I do want Association of Graduates, and I'm not saying we're not. My hope is that we're going to be viewed as the most respected and trusted partner here at West Point, internally in the community and externally across the nation.
Excellent. West Point has an extremely active alumni. How does the West Point alumni contribute to making our alma mater better for current cadets?
This is one of the primary reasons that my wife and I made the decision to move this direction. I can't say every university, but I can assume every university. I can definitely speak to the two that I was able to be a part of here the last few years. But every university has a development office. Most all universities have alumni associations. Only West Point has the long gray line. And there's other universities out there in the nation that would like to achieve, sort of that, that ideal or that group. But the long gray line is a powerful force. And our graduates and their families are strong, connected, active, and passionate, I believe. And at the core, I think of all of our graduates is a genuine love for their academy, and maybe even more so, a commitment to other grads. If a young grad needs help in Denver, Colorado, he or she, if they decide and they ask, will be quickly surrounded by 10, 15, 20 other graduates that'll come immediately. No questions asked. Coming from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where we were just living, I mean, I saw this happen all the time. A young grad, maybe even what you'd consider an older grad, would ask for help or advice, maybe new to the community. I was one of them. And immediately you'd have 5 or 10 other grads that would come very quickly. Again, no questions asked. They know where you came from. They know what you experienced. They know the nation that you've served. And that common experience and that common understanding across the long gray line is a powerful force. Now, I know that all of our graduates, all of our alumni are not necessarily, actively engaged with their society or actively engaged maybe with their class or actively engaged in any, one piece of the Association of Graduates, but all are welcome. All are important to us, and all perspectives and ideas are welcome as well. There may be criticisms of how we're doing things here at West Point or across the nation. And to be honest, we are wide open for suggestions to improve. I think we have a pretty good team. I know, just having come from 2 of these universities, that our efforts here are being modeled and trying to kind of be copied, across the nation. But we can always do better, and we should, be working to do
Yes,
better.
sir. Now, you may have spoken to this already when you talked about old grads. Send us your feedback, send us your questions and concerns. But what is your message to the old grads?
My message, first and foremost, is thank you for your service and your sacrifice. Whether you served 3 years, 5 years, 20, 30, 35, 40 years, every one of us voluntarily came to this rock-bound Highland home. Every one of us served the military in some capacity. I would say thank you for that service and sacrifice first. I'd also say thank you for your example over many years, whether you were in uniform or out of uniform. Name the graduate in Sacramento, or name the graduate in Atlanta or Jacksonville or Minneapolis, wherever across our nation, whether they're in uniform or out of uniform, I guarantee you they're making a positive impact on the people around them. I think that comes from sort of a place within all of us that has this desire to serve others and to make our communities better. And I believe that to be true. So thank you for your service. Thank you for your example. And please know that your Association of Graduates is here to strengthen the long gray line. Now, we have a mission statement that says to serve West Point and the long gray line, and we are committed to both of those, here locally at West Point and really across the world.
The cadets are a different population. You have some that are within months of becoming old grads, the first class cadets, and you have some cadets that are 4 years from becoming old grads. What is your message to cadets about what AOG does for them?
First and foremost would be a message of thanks to those young men and women for having the courage and the commitment to come to West Point. Every one of them, and this is no secret, could have chosen 5 or 10 other directions or universities to attend, and they decided to come here. They could have gone places where we all know would have been maybe a little bit easier, maybe afforded them a little bit more free time, allowed them to do other kinds of things. And they willingly decided to come here for the challenge and for the opportunity, to be honest. So my first message would be a word of thanks. On that same road march that I described earlier, Dave, it was incredible. 14 hours, walking up and down these hills with one platoon. You get to know the cadets that are inside the platoon. The leadership, off the charts. The platoon sergeant, I think, was voted like platoon sergeant of the cycle. And I can see why, because she was incredible. She was up and down that formation, focused on spacing, weapons discipline, communication. She was incredible. But her team leader, her squad leaders and team leaders, just as solid. And when you interacted with the new cadets, you could see this genuine respect, and I would say almost, admiration for their chain of command. That was kind of part one. But as you bounce around, you're seeing somebody from Spokane, somebody from Lubbock, so you name the city in the nation, and it's right there in front of you. About 30 or so, I remember the exact number inside of the platoon, 30, and I didn't find 2 from the same state. So doing the math, we're covering almost the entire nation in this formation. But one of the individuals I bumped into, she's the first of her generation to go in the Army, the first of her generation, of course, to come to a military academy. She was killing this road march. And I asked her, so, why West Point? Why did you decide to go to West Point? Her answer was 2 parts. She said, I want to be around the very best. And I think I found that. And she looked around, kind of at her platoon mates. And I want to be challenged by the very best. And she was really referring to faculty, staff, tactical officers, coach. I want to be around the very best. And I want to be challenged by the very best. And I was like, geez, that's a pretty good answer for me. I said, thanks for her time. I didn't want to, kind of just sit there and monopolize all of her time. So I started moving forward. And she said, oh, sir, by the way, one more thing. I turned around and looked back at her, and she said, I want to make my parents proud. And for, a Monday morning at like 8:30 after 3 hours, that was pretty inspirational to hear. And I'm pretty confident that if I would have asked all 30 of those new cadets the same question, I would have got similar, maybe not exact, but very similar answers, just based on, kind of their level of strength and energy. And as they were making their way, back to join the Corps cadets, it was pretty powerful. So my message is thank you. Thank you for choosing West Point. You're following a long line, literally dressed in gray, who remain proud of what you are doing today, and most importantly, who you are. The long gray line is a resource for every one of you, every one of us, while you wear cadet gray, and when you decide to, or when you make your way and depart Thayer Gate out into the regular Army. Your Association of Graduates is here for you.
Sir, the vision of the West Point Association of Graduates is for the long gray line to be the most highly connected alumni body in the world. Tell me a little bit about some of your initiatives that will support that vision.
That's a great question. I think the way I'll try to answer that is by first talking kind of at the highest level about the Association of Graduates. And you're probably aware, back in May 1869, the Long Gray Line entrusted the West Point Association of Graduates to continue a legacy, strengthen bonds, and always remember the institution that brought us together. For 154 or so years, that mission has remained unchanged. Our mission is 2 parts, as I said earlier, to serve West Point and the Long Gray Line. We do this by remaining true to our ideals, preserving these timeless traditions, and working very hard to link graduates beyond the gates and elevating the cadet experience. The connections and the vision statement is one of the most tangible, parts of achieving that mission. When I came to West Point back in 1987 from Phoenix, Arizona, I was met by a platoon of Apaches in A4, of course, who I had never met before, all across the nation. My roommates were from Iowa and Illinois. My platoon mates were from New Jersey, South Philly, Kentucky, California, Massachusetts, Texas, Connecticut, Alabama, South Dakota. All across the nation, brought together for a very intense summer and a plebe year. And then together, working our way through those 4 years. There's, some powerful connections that exist just based on that experience. But those connections continued with us, throughout our military careers, whether they were 5 years or 30 years, in some very important ways. Here, maybe CONUS, and then incredible ways overseas, deployed in the defense of our nation. One of those graduates is one of my closest friends, a gentleman by the name of John Leffers. We're roommates, very close here at the academy, of course, Ranger buddies at Ranger School, served together kind of, through the infantry, commanded battalions together in Baghdad. He was in Baghdad. I was just on the outside. But I can't tell you the emotions and the connection that we had, making our way through this career, but also being side by side in combat, working very hard to lead our soldiers and to accomplish the mission. It's an indescribable feeling or emotion that you share with your classmates as you make your way through this career. And it's not just your classmates. I had the privilege of commanding at a few levels where I got to see West Point graduates at all ranks, in all positions, doing incredible things. I mean, leading soldiers, risking their lives, displaying courage. And those connections, whether you're in uniform or out of uniform, they stay with you for the rest of your life. I could talk about this all day, but the mission of the association is to enable or advance or strengthen those connections and make them even, stronger, for all of our graduates, regardless of the time you graduated, regardless of the path you took in your life, regardless of the stage of your life. It's to work very hard to help maintain and strengthen those connections.
AOG currently supports 82 classes, which is incredible to me that there are still 82 classes of graduates represented, across the long gray line, 129 societies, and 6 shared interest groups. What is the importance of all of these groups?
They're critically important. One group that you didn't mention that I wanted to highlight is, of course, we have our board of directors. I bragged about them earlier and their passion for the academy and for our institution. But we have a group of 54 advisors that are organized in a group that's at large, a group that represents our societies, and a group that represents our classes. So 54 individuals that are giving of their time and their talent really to advance the academy and to support the long gray line. They're connected to all of the societies you just described, the shared interest groups, the classes, to form a network of connections, really, across our alumni body. I haven't been across every institution around the country, of course, but I tell you, the network that we have in terms of classes, societies, the shared interest groups, all of these advisors is a powerful force for us that kind of manifests itself maybe individually, one-on-one connections, regardless of where you're at in the nation, or in larger groups, reunions, gatherings, or just networks of support to each other. It's an incredibly powerful network that supports all of our graduates. And really, the AOG has a number of programs inside of what we're doing here to try to enable and empower these groups to, again, remain connected, to better help each other, and to support either our classmates or the graduates behind you. One of the programs that's it's incredibly powerful is the 50-year affiliate program. This program has been going on for some time now, but it joins the classes that are currently here at West Point with their 50-year affiliate. So as an example, the March back that I was talking about earlier joined the class of 27, our plebe class, with the class of 77. And I think we had, I forget the exact number, but over 60 from the class of 77 that took their time to come here and walk those 14 miles. That was a powerful day, really in terms of the connections within our long gray line. And then 1 week later, the class of 2025 was standing proudly in India whites at Eisenhower Hall, joined by the class of 1975 for their affirmation. And so these moments are occurring with frequency in a way that is incredibly powerful, of course, for an old grad to see and be a part of, but I know for our current Corps of Cadets, to see the examples that have come before them. So it's a long way of coming back to those classes, those societies help empower programs like the 50-year affiliate, and there's so many more. There's the Ring Melt program is incredible. The Distinguished Graduate program is amazing. All of these recognizing individuals within a long gray line, connecting them with our current Corps of Cadets.
Sir, one of the great things that you just mentioned that I haven't asked you about yet is the Ring Melt program. And that's a fairly new program. It wasn't around when I was a cadet, but it's so inspirational. Tell me a little bit about the Ring Melt program, please.
So the Ring Melt program is, again, another incredibly powerful initiative that occurs over the course of the 4 years that our cadets are making their journey here at the academy. But it really enables old grads, maybe family members of our fallen alumni, to donate their class ring to a ring melt. It takes those rings that have been donated and melts them down and takes that raw material, the gold, and shares that in the creation of the next class rings. The ceremony itself of the donations is a powerful recognition of the service and example of our graduates that have come before us and that have donated their rings. And that message is reinforced with the firsties as they are presented their rings. We didn't have this back in 91 when I was a firstie, but looking at the emotion and sort of the recognition of where these firsties kind of fit inside of the long gray line, and just kind of imagining the sacrifice and the experiences of the classes that have gone before is incredibly powerful. It's a beautiful ceremony. It's a remarkable initiative, to be able to kind of, share some of those thoughts and ideas and emotions, with our first class. Having three sons that have all graduated here, those are some very powerful moments for them in their development, and a real recognition of kind of the responsibility that they have once they graduate and follow in the footsteps of so many before them.
Sure. Something that I don't think most people understand is that the government only funds the core education for cadets at West Point. That is, everything that's required to earn a degree and to receive a commission in the Army. Many other aspects of the cadet education or the cadet experience are funded through AOG's Margin of Excellence programs. Can you describe what Margin of Excellence is and how it contributes to the overall cadet experience?
Yes, absolutely. Our government, the Department of Defense, U.S. Army, takes great care of the United States Military Academy, provides a great level of funding to make sure that the mission is accomplished here to a very high standard. Heck, there's construction going on all over this academy in the likes they haven't seen since 50, 60 years ago. The Margin of Excellence enables the academy, the superintendent and his leader team, to create an environment of what the name stands for, of excellence. Excellence in academics, excellence in the military domain, excellence in the physical domain, and it provides unique opportunities in and out of the classroom that cadets wouldn't normally be able to get to. Study abroad, study with industry, incredible experiences inside the Pentagon or inside the Department of State, or you name it. The Margin of Excellence is enabling our cadets to have these experiences to improve on their education and to make them better prepared to be a second lieutenant in the United States Army. All of this is provided by our donors, primarily graduates who benefited from many of these programs or experiences years ago, or maybe not, and want to provide that for our cadets today. And it is an incredible way to enhance the experience. We aim to be the very best in the nation at producing leaders of character in the defense of our nation. The Margin of Excellence is a critical element of being able to create that environment so the very, very best cadets can be the very, very best officers for our soldiers in the Army.
Sir, in addition to supporting cadets, the Association of Graduates also provides a number of services for old grads as well. Can you tell me about some of these?
Dave, we probably need another hour to talk through all of the activities that are being offered or being thought of. Back to your previous, comment and question, many of these initiatives are really from the long gray line itself. They're either suggestions or needs or areas that the AOG can help provide and support that best support the long gray line. And I'll give you a few of these. We have a very strong career services team here in AOG with a lot of effort in the last few years. Todd Brown was significant in pushing this, hard to the level it's at right now. And it's a great resource for our graduates when they're thinking about retiring or they're thinking about transitioning from the military. There is, of course, the web-based tools, Sallyport, which is very good, our website, which enables societies and parents groups and others to remain connected and to help coordinate some of their activities. We've also worked very hard the last 5, 6, maybe longer to make West Point a welcoming or as welcome a location as possible for reunions, for visits. If a graduate is bringing his or her family here back to the academy, we want to make that as special and rewarding experience as possible. And we've got a number of programs in there, to make their rockbound Highland home more accessible and more, I guess I would say, engageable. But there is a suite of efforts and activities, tons of communications that we look at all the time to try to improve, to sharpen, and to make sure they're hitting their target audiences. But a combination of them, emails, the grad news, the magazine, the website, really working to make sure that these mediums of communication are tailored to make sure that they do what they're intended to do, and that's to take care of our alumni.
Sir, one of the great things about the West Point Association of Graduates is that it helps cadets and graduates focus on the moments that matter throughout their cadet experience and in their life beyond the academy. Can you tell me about what some of those moments that matter are?
Well, the moments that matter, I think all of our graduates can quickly, start to listen to those, based on their experience here at the academy. Of course, our day, as you make your way, through, plea parent weekend, affirmation, of course, ring weekend, graduation. And so within the AOG, what we've worked really hard to do is identify those moments as a cadet and then as a graduate that have great meaning and impact on our lives, and look for ways that we can help, we can enhance, we can support, and to make those moments as special as possible, not only for the cadet or the graduate, but for their family as well, to try to make that entire experience as meaningful as possible. It's a nice way of focusing our attention on the graduates themselves or the cadets and see what their needs are, how we can be of best help, and try to make the greatest positive impact. It's a really important part of our focus and efforts. Hopefully our graduates see that and feel it. And if they don't, we'd love to get the feedback and the recommendations on how we can improve.
Question for you, sir. What does West Point mean to you?
Honestly, it means everything, more than words can say. I feel a great sense of responsibility coming back, a great sense of promise and possibility, and honestly, a commitment to excellence in everything we do. I feel that the expectations are very high, and the sense of urgency is very high as well. And we have a great opportunity here in this organization to do great good for the academy and for our long gray line, and that's what I'm focused on. My dad asked me that same question right before we made our way from Louisiana to West Point, and he just asked, what it meant to my wife and I having this opportunity to come back to our alma mater. And I said, Dad, honestly, it means the world. And I finally feel like we are both coming back home. So we're thrilled to be here, Dave, and so excited to be a part of the team, and really just looking forward to the good things to follow here in the years ahead.
Well, sir, it's been an honor and a joy to talk with you today. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your vision for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for your leadership and for everything you do for our cadets and for our academy for so many years. You are such a positive example for all of us, and I'm just glad to be on your team. So thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a production of the WPAOG Broadcast Network. Please take a moment to rate and review the show and join us each week for a new episode. Thank you for listening.